know all the chess rules and you're ready to play any game you want online. But before going to an over-the-board tournament, you need to know something more: how to write a chess game. So there is a system called chess notation that allows us to write down every chess move in the order that it takes place, and like this we can record games. So let's start with the pieces. Each piece is represented by letters. The king is represented by the letter K. So if you want to write a move of the king, you will start with the letter K. The queen is represented by the letter Q. The bishop is represented by the letter B. The rook by the letter R. And the knight, the initial letter is K, but we don't want to call the knight like the king because it would be confusing, and so we use the second one, the letter N. For the pawn, we don't use any initial letter. So, now, how to write down a move? So we know how the piece that is moving is represented. But to write a move is not enough to write down which piece is moving. You need to write first the initial letter of the piece that is moving. If it's the pawn, you don't need to write anything. And then you need to add the name of the square where this piece is moving. For example, if this knight is moving to this square is named as G5. So you write N, that is the initial square of the knight, G5, and G5. The knight is moving on G5. What if you are moving a pawn? For example, this pawn is moving 2 steps forward. So for pawn, you don't use any initial letter, so you will not write anything. So you will just write the square where this pawn is moving. That is E4. So you will write E4. Now, we need to see some special move. How do we indicate special moves? Let's start with the capture. So what is happening if here white is moving and is capturing a pawn? Well, it's basically very similar to a normal move. So you will write knight. Then as the knight is capturing the pawn, you will write the X. And then you will add the square where the knight is going. In this case, is the square A2. So you will just write N, X, A2. And, oh sorry, this is H2. And you will write knight takes H2. You will read knight takes H2. All right, let's go to another case, the en passant. So as you know, en passant is a very special rule in chess, and you need to write down in the right way. So, if white here is moving the pawn of 2 steps, black in this position has the possibility to make an en passant. So the pawn will be captured and the pawn will go to the square E3. So, in this position, what you will have to write? Here, you need to indicate which pawn is taking. Because if we move this pawn here, and we remove the knight, at this point, actually 2 en passants are possible. So to make clear which pawn is taking, you need to indicate the file where the pawn is placed. So let's go back to this position. In this case, the pawn that is capturing is placed on the D file. So you will write D, X, that means takes, and then you will write the square where the pawn is going. So D takes E3. All right. One more move that you need to know the right notation is the promotion. So this is going in 2 steps. So the first step of a promotion, so for example here, if black can move, black can promote the pawn on H2. If it would be a pawn move, you would write just H1. But it's not just happening this, because here you're doing the move h1, and so you write h1, but then you're changing your pawn for one piece. So you have to write h1, then equal, the symbol equal, plus the initial capital letter of the piece that you want to take. If you take the queen, you will write h1 equal queen, so queen. This is for the promotion. We still need to see two important symbols. One is for check and one is for checkmate. If you're making a move and giving a check to your opponent, you will write the move followed by the symbol plus. If you give checkmate, you will write the move followed by the symbol hashtag. That means checkmate. There is one more move that you need to know how to notate, and this is the castling. So you can, in this position, black can short castle or long castle. If black is choosing to do the short castle, it will write 0 dash 0, so 2 zeros. If black wants to long castle, then you will have to write 3 0, always 0 dash 0 dash 0. So now one last example. What is happening if two pieces of the same, of white for example, two same pieces, so for example two knights, can go in a same square? Look at this position. We have two knights and both knights can go in the square d2. So if you're writing knight d2, this could be two possibilities, and you cannot contemplate two possibilities at the same time. So in such a case, you need to be precise. You need to write knight, and then, as with the pawn, when it's capturing another pawn, you have to write the letter of the file where the knight is starting. For example, if this knight is moving to d2, you have to write knight, capital letter, then B, because the initial square is on the B file, so knight, B, and then you write the square where the knight is moving, d2. So knight, B, d2. The same thing, as you can imagine, can happen with rooks. For example, let's move the king in another position. Let's say that one rook is moving to, actually let's do with numbers like this. So those two rooks, both rooks, can go to the square h7. If we just write r for rook, h7, both rooks could go in that square. So which rook is moving? Yes, in this case, as the two rooks are also both in the h file, you need to indicate the number of the rank where the rook that is moving is starting from. So let's say that this rook from h5 is moving to h7. You will write rook, 5, and then h7. So now you know every single rule to notate every of your game. Go enjoy the game of chess online or over the board.